Okay, so big things to remember. This is going to apply to pretty much everything. Pretty much everything that we do where I send over these guitar profiles. We're going to start at 60, and we go up by 5 beats per minute every single time you play it right. So, just like I talked about in that ebook, if it sounded good enough to be on a recording, that means what you did was good enough to increase the speed. That's the level of perfection that we want. And when mistakes are made, and it's going to happen, you want to stop where you're at and start that piece of music over again. So this way you are reinforcing playing things correctly and not allowing mistakes. So when a mistake happens, you don't want to just keep going and finish the piece, because then it's training the brain that it's okay to make mistakes. So we really want to focus hard on making everything as perfect as we possibly can. So about 10 to 15 minutes each thing. There's usually plenty of time. Once you get to that 10-minute mark, things start to get pretty difficult. So when it takes like a minute, 2 minutes of really trying to nail what you're working on, that's when you know it's time to stop. So after you get to that point of 1 to 2 minutes of really trying to hit it, once you finally do hit it, that's it for the day, for that particular piece of music you're working on. So with this guy, you're going to be sliding on beat 3 for everything. And something that helps people is counting along with this. Instead of saying 3, say slide. So I'll demonstrate it like that, and always recommend counting out loud with stuff going from 60 up to 120. Past 120, if you can still count, definitely an okay thing to do. But past that point, it can start getting a little tricky to get tongue-tied because it's going so fast. So past 120, not a big deal if you leave the counting alone. But here we go. Number 1, 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, slide. 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 So something else that's going to be helpful. Notice how my hand was moving the whole time. So if you do that, it's going to build a habit of your strumming hand being in the correct position. So this way you're used to, like for example here, like you're just changing chords on a downbeat, making sure that you move to the new chord while your hand is strumming down. That's what we're building towards. So if you can move your hand along with that metronome click, it'd be very helpful. All right, 120. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, slide. 4. Now, I'm just doing various speed demonstrations here, so this way you can compare what you're doing to some different speeds here. So instead of me going up by 5s this whole time, because it would be a very long video. So I always do just like maybe 3-4 speeds on stuff like this, so you have some comparison. 160. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. $200. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, number 2. Sliding in to the new bar. Maybe time. Okay, so just like with the other one, saying slide when you're supposed to slide, certainly a good idea if you find that you're moving at the wrong point. So I'll count it like that. So every time the slide happens, I will say slide just to really emphasize what we're doing here. All right, 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide. 2, 3, 4, slide. 2, 3, 4, slide. 2, 3, 4, go. 120. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide. 2, 3, and 4, slide. 2, 3, and 4, slide. 2, 3, and 4, slide. 180. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 240. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, number 3. So the main focus of this one was just getting the right hand to be a bit more fluid. So when I'm strumming, I do have a slight bend to my wrist. And let's change angles here. So I'm not keeping my wrist locked either direction, like having this kind of slant or that kind of slant. Just kind of doing like this scoopy type motion. So it's kind of it's like a semicircle thing. So try doing that. Keep a nice loose arm and wrist the whole time. So this way, when you begin the downstroke, the pick is angled so that the butt of the pick is going towards the floor. So this way, it'll glide across the strings this way. So it starts out like that. You turn the wrist, and then your upstrokes, the pick will be dragging this way, so the butt of the pick pointing up, and then when you perform the upstroke, it won't catch when you start, you just glide right on up there. So, let's keep this angle to demonstrate number 3. As you get more comfortable with this, think about when you're changing to the new chord, you're still sliding into that chord, but you're strumming at the same time. So you move to the new chord as you begin the downstroke for the new bar. 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would just say done on those last chords there. So no need to let the final chord ring out all 4 beats. 120. 1, 2, 3, 4. 180. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 240. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling up some of the stuff we looked at yesterday and kind of review what we talked about. So we'll take a moment here. Okay. Actually, let me do it this way. Going through a folder right now. That. It's hesitating to open. Okay, there we go. It's not the one I wanted. This is the one I wanted. Okay, so this is the one I sent you. And this is what we looked at last time, or yesterday. So, talked about how these things are connected. So one of the things that was shown is if you cover up the first note of each string, you are left with the same pattern. And then the other thing took us is here. So with this, the 3 notes per string shapes, going up to the high E string to end the shape. So like here you get there we go, the 10, 12, 13. Well, that's how this one begins, 10, 12, 13. And then this one up here ends 12, 13, 15. This one begins 12, 13, 15. And scrolling down here, so that C major scale, or the C Ionian mode, find that right in here amongst all the natural notes. And then we got D Dorian shape. And then go down here to the open position. There is the E Phrygian shape. And it just continues on like that. So memorizing one scale at a time, very helpful. So when you can go up and down the C scale from memory, once you can do that, then you can start working on the D Dorian shape. And then once you can play both back to back from memory, then you can start working on the E Phrygian shape. So you have the E Phrygian in 2 positions. You have the high octave and then the open position. I always recommend doing the high octave first because you're already there after doing the D Dorian. See, the next thing we looked at, where is it? Here we go. So we're looking at this, talked about how we use this to demonstrate that it doesn't matter what scale shape you use, it's all the same 7 notes. So you can go around the circle, you can go backwards, jump around any which way, you're still playing the same 7 notes. So when you're playing over a backing track, like the one I sent you yesterday, and I'll demonstrate that, or using that in a moment, but any of the scale shapes on that will work, any of the scale shapes that I gave you, because that's all in the key of C, also known as the key of A minor. They are relative to each other, same notes. So yeah, because all those mode shapes are built within that major scale, they will all fit with an A minor backing track. So, and then down here we have just all the whole steps and half steps showing how similar each mode is, and it's really just starting on a different note within that major scale. So starting on the first note, you go around the series of whole steps and half steps, you just play the major scale. If you start on the second note in, go around the circle and end back on that second note, that's the D Dorian mode. So like down here makes a little more sense, I think, because now you're seeing how starting on any note, you go up a whole step, half step, whole, half. That's your major scale formula, as it's talked about up here. And then so the Dorian mode, you start anywhere, and then you go up a whole step, then a half step, 3 wholes, half, whole. You just did the Dorian mode. So we'll continue talking about this stuff more and more as we go. Now let's get the backing track up that I sent you. Let's get some volume. Okay. So any of the scale shapes are going to work fine playing on top of this. So you can just like start by playing the scale itself. Just hear how it sounds. So making up solos, I think of it as like finding notes that sound good to hang out on. Really wanted to hear that particular note. Anyway, so yeah, like using the D Dorian shape. It fits with this chord progression. The E Phrygian shape also fits. Too. It's got a lot more stretches to deal with when you get up to these strings. So I always recommend when you're starting off learning to improvise, go slow. Just go slow. Find notes that sound good to your ear amongst the backing track you're playing. And you can certainly look up A minor backing tracks. You can look up C major backing tracks. You can look up like mode specific backing tracks. So looking at that sheet, you have like D Dorian backing tracks, E Phrygian, F Lydian, things like that would be totally fine. And you'll have different characteristics of how it sounds. So we'll get into reasons why that is when we continue to talk more about modes, get more in depth with that. So practicing improv is for me, was a much more fun way of learning the scales versus just going up and down, up and down, up and down. And one last thing, when you're doing the scales, remember to use the same set of fingers going up and back down. And so yesterday, you said that the first, second, and fourth finger for the whole step stretch felt the most natural for you. So keep doing that every time you have the whole step stretch. And I think that about covers it. So if any questions come up, please let me know. And I will see you again next week.